Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, I want to talk about immigration to Israel in light of this event that happened yesterday in Colleyville, Texas, where there was a hostage situation in a synagogue. And it looks like we're having a bunch of rabbis in Israel calling on Jews to return to Israel, to leave whatever country they're in. In this case, they're talking to American Jews, asking for them to come back to Israel. And I want to look at some of the numbers of Jewish populations and immigration trends and so forth. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you end up liking it. Leave your comments and thoughts in the comment section below. And then also make sure to share this with anyone that finds this kind of thing interesting. So I'm not going to go too much into the details of what happened here. I'm more focusing in on this part right here. Rabbis unite in warning to US Jews. Return to Israel now. Okay. So I'm going to read a little bit here just so you kind of get an idea of what happened. On Saturday, a gunman entered Congregation Beth Israel in the city of Colleyville, Texas, as they were beginning their Shabbat prayer service via Zoom in Facebook at 11 a.m. The gunman took 4 Jews, including the rabbi, hostage. One male hostage was released at 5 p.m. After an 11-hour siege, police charged the site and freed all the hostages. In Israel, several leading rabbis monitoring the event united in an emergency message to American Jews: come home to Israel. I find that interesting. I find that interesting because we know that it's prophecy, that the scattered Jews throughout the world are meant to return home to Israel. Probably not 100% of them in order to fulfill the prophecy, and you can say that probably the bulk of it has already happened since Israel became a nation, but I think it's still ongoing. And this is just another incident where, maybe there's going to be more Jews that decide to listen to them and decide to immigrate to Israel under the law of return that they have there. So let's read just a little bit of what these rabbis said. And it's actually kind of surprising, um, just like the way that they present it. So just look. Rabbi Yosef Berger, the rabbi of King David's tomb on Mount Zion, saw the attack as a clear sign of imminent redemption. I'm not sure if he's talking about the Messiah there, but anyway, quote, God wants all the Jews to come to Israel. This could not be clearer. Ishmael means God will listen. And of course, he's talking about the Arabs there and Muslims because it's tradition that they're descendants of Ishmael, right? Okay, so Ishmael means God will listen. The function of the Arabs is to make the Jews cry out to God. God did not take the Jews out of Egypt until we cried out to him. The same is true now. The final redemption is certainly coming very soon, but it can come in kindness from our turning to God, or it can come through difficulties. We are seeing more and more attacks on Jews. They must choose how the redemption will come for them. So that's, and I don't know, maybe he's kind of right. I don't know the specifics in the way that the Lord deals with the Jews. Um, it very well could be that he allows some of these tragedies to happen to get them to return, because I think that is part of the plan, is that for them to gather back to their homeland, to their promised land. So interesting. And now we have another rabbi. Rabbi Pinchas Winston saw the incident as a divine warning, a process with strong historical precedents. Quote, the Jews always get warnings, but we seem to have forgotten what they mean and how God works. God usually gives warnings. For someone who has no faith in God, these aren't warnings. These are random acts. History is a long string of random acts with no plan. So it is easier to ignore these warnings. It is more difficult, though clearly not impossible, for people of faith to ignore these warnings. Uh, they should understand that there is a message and a plan. These are clearly not random events, but the power of inertia is enormous and can convince intelligent people not to act. All throughout history, violence against the Jews has only increased, as it is currently doing in the U.S. It has never decreased. Clinging to false ideas about the past, clinging to an illusion about current events, and what they mean for the future never ends well. By the time it is indisputable and clear, it is already too late. To this so this message is not for the people who won't listen. The fact that there are warnings is evidence that there are still people who are undecided, and it is still possible to leave. And this is interesting because, this is just like the second coming. You know, how there's people that are asleep, they don't want to um, recognize the signs of the times for what they are, right? And they'd rather just kind of cling to false ideas, like the rabbi said here. Um, and then it's going to get to the point where it's too late. You know, the time is going to come when it's too late. So the fact that we're still at this stage of Earth's history means that there's still time. You know, President Nelson said that time is running out, but as far as we can tell right now, there is still time. And in this case, I don't know, he might be conveying the word of the Lord, or what the Lord wants for the Jews, for them to return to their homeland. We know that he's going to come to them at the second coming, and that there's going to be this like mass conversion once they see who he is and he identifies himself. So it may be important for these people to be there in order to participate in that event. Okay, now there's another rabbi. Rabbi Nachman Kahana was only partially surprised at the event. Quote, "For the last 20 years, I have been shouting to everyone who will listen that it is time for the Jews to come home. I am very surprised. I am not surprised that a Muslim attacked Jews in a synagogue. That happens all the time. I'm surprised that there are Reformed Jews who still pray on Shabbat." He's referring to, if you're not familiar with Judaism, there's basically three main ways that it's practiced. There's the Orthodox Jews, that are the ones that are more, you know, um, sticklers to like the law and the commandments and literal interpretations of things. They're more strict. And then you have conservative Jews that are more middle of the road. But then you have Reform Jews that are more prone to like worldly ideas and not really believing in the more miraculous things of the scriptures, like um, just calling everything just a metaphor, or just whatever, that it didn't really happen. So he's basically calling on these more like um, worldly Jews, I guess you could say, or liberal Jews. He's surprised that they're still praying on Shabbat. So it's kind of harsh, but that's what he says. Rabbi Kahana noted that there is currently a $54 million program from the Jewish Federations of North America for Live Secure, a program of security resources to help protect the Jewish community. Quote, "They are talking about security cameras and steel doors, security guards, and self-defense. They have accepted the inevitability of the threat to Jews. They know that the violence is going to increase. Once the anti-Semitism starts, you can't stop it. The only answer is to pack your bags and come home." But just like 80% of the Jews died in the plague of darkness, the Jews who stay in the US are going to be a footnote in a history book if they are remembered at all. They have no relevance to the future of the Jewish people. Just like we don't know a single name of a Jew that stayed in Egypt or Babylonia, they'll be forgotten and their grandchildren will disappear. God is choosing his team, and everyone in the world gets to choose whether they are going to be on his team. For the Jews, it is easy. It has always been easy. If you want to be relevant to the Jewish people, it is only here in Israel. If you want to be a Reformed Jew in Texas, you will be lucky to stay Jewish and even lucky to stay alive, Rabbi Kahana said. So those are some pretty pointed words, and I don't know. He might be right. He might be right. But it's interesting that you have all these rabbis calling on American Jews to return home to Israel. Now, I've looked at the numbers here. Here's like a chart of the total immigration numbers of immigrants into Israel. I don't know how it breaks down as far as how many are Jews and how many are from other countries. But I'm assuming that the majority of these are Jews. Within the first 4 years, down here from 48 to 51, you had a lot a lot that were coming in, and then after that, it kind of like died down a bit until 1990. In 1991, there was like a big surge again, and then it kind of like it was still large for the next few years until, let's see, 96. Yeah, probably till about 96. And then after that, started to kind of die down, and now it's like starting to kind of go back up. Not as big as like back here in the 90s, but it does seem like there's um, more that's coming in within recent years. So that's interesting. I wanted to take a look at this. Among the global Jewish population, the number of Jews in Israel is close to 6.9 million. So that's the Jews that are in Israel, while about 8.3 million live outside Israel, including around 6 million in the United States. It's interesting that the majority, the vast majority of those that are outside of Israel live in the United States. We know that this is a promised land, right? The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, this is a promised land. This is the land of Joseph, essentially. So you have Israel for Judah, the Americas for Joseph. Um, so here's the breakdown right here. Um, and then you have like the other leading countries like France at almost 500,000, but just a little bit under. You got France, Canada, United Kingdom, Argentina, Russia, Germany, Australia, Brazil. And it's interesting that there are so many of them that are in English-speaking countries, either in the United States or in the British Commonwealth. Because I've talked about before on this channel how uh, there seems to be a really high concentration of Israelite blood in the British Isles, and they've spread out across the world. We have countries like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and there also happens to be a lot of Jews that have gone to these places. So it's interesting. Um, Here's a Wikipedia article that kind of like breaks it down, and you can see that they're mostly in Western countries, um, with a few exceptions. Here's a map that you can look at, and then you can click on like the individual countries. But again, like the majority of them, if it's orange or red, that's like a higher number of Jews, and then if it's like this purple color or gray, then there's not very many there. Well, no, I'm assuming that the gray that it's just not reported on this map because we just read that France had a bunch. So, um, and then you can look at the breakdowns by state, and this won't really come as any surprise. A lot of them, a lot are in New York, and then after that, California, and then Florida, New Jersey. So not too surprising. Although Utah is like pretty far down here on this list. It's only at the 41 spot. Kansas is higher. It's at the number 28 spot. But so, and then here's a map here you can look at as well. So I find it fascinating. I think that the numbers are really, really interesting. It's interesting that the total number of Jews is pretty close to the number of the church, our church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They're similar in size, you know, and who knows what things are going to look like as the years go by. How many more are going to go to Israel? We covered one story where there were the Cochin Jews in India in this one area, and once Israel became a nation, a few years later, they all up and left, and they all immigrated to Israel. Uh, are things like what just happened yesterday? Is that going to continue to drive Jews to move to Israel for safety? I don't know. It's interesting how in the church, we especially recently we're talking a lot about safety, both physical and spiritual safety. And there might be kind of like a mirror situation going on with the Jews where they have to go to Jerusalem to find safety. And when I say Jerusalem, I just mean Israel. But, Just like how there's for us, there's safety in the stakes of Zion, and there's definitely safety, at least right now, in the United States. Um, it's just interesting. There's an interesting parallel between our church, what we're doing, and then them and what they're doing. How it seems that we both recognize, both the Jews and us, that the end is near, the final, what they said earlier, the final redemption. Uh, and that there's this gathering that's taking place. Everyone is gathering to their promised lands, and again, we know that the church has said Zion is wherever you live, gathered to the stakes of Zion, but it is still a gathering, and it's just interesting. So, just thought I would point this out. I think it's really interesting what these three rabbis said. Um, and we'll just have to keep an eye on this situation and see what else kind of unfolds as the years go by. All right, so that's it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video. If you liked it, make sure to leave your comments below, and also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.